Hi guys, so my good friend Jeff has uploaded this video about Nigel Farage going to Italy to meet with an Italian politician who wants to convince Italians to leave the European Union. So let's hear what he had to say.
Nigel Farage is gearing up to assist those many Italians who now want their country to emulate Brexit UK and leave the European Union. And yesterday the Express reported, Mr Farage has stoked the fires of Euroscepticism once more by sharing a picture of himself with a freshly laundered Italexit t-shirt on Twitter. The picture was taken on Monday as the Brexit Party leader met Italian Senator Gianluigi Paragone, the driving force behind a new single-issue party aimed at taking Italy out of the EU.
Okay, let me just give you a little bit of information about Paragone. So Paragone used to be a member, or he used to be a journalist for a newspaper that represents the hard right in Italy. So it was the League Party. So there was a newspaper called Padania. It was a right-wing newspaper for a right-wing party. He went into politics and he joined the Five Star Movement and he became a senator. Now, he's the only one in this party that he has set up. So he set up the Italexit party, and he's the only member of this party at the moment. And he wants Italy to leave the European Union. He set up a website as well, and I'll leave a link to the website if you want to read it. It's in Italian, it's not in English. But the website is basically just blaming the European Union for everything that's wrong in Italy.
Mr Farage, who has been instrumental in Britain's decision to quit the bloc 4 years ago and who has remained closely involved ever since, tweeted the picture with a simple one-word message, Italexit. And Farage's tweet endorsed the website italexit.it, which has the slogan, No Europa per l'Italia, which means No Europe for Italy, a campaign that started last Thursday. And this is being spearheaded by Italian journalist, politician and current Senator Gianluigi Paragone. And having been on the receiving end during the pandemic, as well as the EU Coronavirus Recovery Fund and budget talks, the once very pro-EU Italians are now feeling rather annoyed towards it. And there are fears that even though a coronavirus fund deal has been reached, lasting damage may have been caused to EU 27 member state relations, especially with Italy.
I actually disagree here. I think that this money that has come from Europe, that has been agreed by the European Union, will actually encourage more support for the European Union. But I could be wrong.
Founding member of the European Union. In fact, a recent poll shows that 67% of Italians now believe that membership of the EU is having a detrimental effect on their country.
I think you have to be very skeptical of opinion polls, because if I created an opinion poll and asked people, do you think the European Union has a detrimental effect on Italy? The wording pushes people in the direction of saying, yes, I do. Now, most people, once again, don't understand what the European Union does and how it benefits their countries. And it's not just Italy. Many countries don't understand the benefits that the European Union present to them. So if you look around and you see problems and someone says, well, the European Union is probably the problem, do you think it'd be better if we left the European Union? Then most people would say, well, yes, if it will make the problems go away.
And even back in April, a Techni poll showed that 49% of Italians want their country free of the European Union.
Once again, the word free. Do you want to be free of the European Union, or do you want to be shackled to the European Union? See the way I can develop a question that will push people in a certain direction to respond to it.
Now, Nigel Farage has said in the past that he not only wants the UK out of the EU, but that he also wants to see the whole EU project dismantled. So assisting such a large player as Italy to leave the bloc would be high on his agenda.
Now, my question is, why? Why does Nigel Farage want Italy to leave the European Union? Excuse me. Nigel Farage has said in the past where he wants the entire European Union to collapse. Why? What benefit is there for Nigel Farage? What benefit is there for Jeff if the European Union collapses? This is a question I've always asked Brexiteers. Can you point to a tangible benefit that leaving the European Union has for you, or the European Union not existing anymore? Can you point to a tangible benefit? And I don't want to hear about, well, we'll be able to control our taxes and we will be able to eliminate red tape, which is ridiculous because now the UK is increasing the amount of red tape due to the restrictions that are going to be on the border and the end of frictionless trade. But even, aside from all of these, I ask Brexiteers, I say, how do you benefit as an individual by leaving the European Union? And I've never received a response. I haven't heard anyone explain to me how they benefit. Now, they could throw the question back at me and say, well, Max, how do you benefit from being a member of the European Union? Well, I'll just give you a very simple example. A number of years ago, it was about, no, not a number of years ago, last year actually, I visited the Titanic Museum in Belfast. And while I was there, I recommend you visit. It's a beautiful exhibition and it's very, very interesting. But it exists thanks to help funding from the European Union. In my local town, there are a number of green areas that have been redeveloped. And that has been thanks to European Union funding. I like nature. I like to walk around in nature. I like to experience nature. And thanks to the European Union, I'm able to experience that to a level that is more comfortable than having to drive tens of kilometers or halfway across the region to experience nature. So thanks to the European Union, I as an individual am benefiting from something tangible. Green areas for me. I don't have children, but recently, just in the newspaper from my local town, they're developing a gym for local children. And I think something like 50 or 60,000 euro is coming from the European Union to help pay for that. So local people are actually having a gym built for them, and part of that is from the European Union. Now, if the European Union didn't exist, probably that gym wouldn't exist. If the European Union didn't exist, the green areas that I'd like to visit wouldn't exist either. They would be built up. There would be no place for people to go and enjoy those areas. The Titanic Museum, I don't know whether it would exist or not. So these are tangible benefits I, as an individual, have enjoyed thanks to the European Union. All I'm asking from the Brexiteers is to give me an example of something you benefit from by not being a member of the European Union or the European Union no longer existing. Now, I can tell you what Nigel Farage benefits and how he benefits because he makes money from this. He raises his profile and many very rich people fund his campaigns. And of course, he takes a cut from that. He understands the benefits, the financial benefits for him by convincing other people to vote against their own interests. How does Jeff benefit? I don't think Jeff benefits unless he understands, well, there's a channel on YouTube, I can create content for this channel and I'm benefiting from that financially. The message of Brexit, gets lots of views and I get money from that. I don't have a problem with him doing that if that's what he said. But he hasn't presented any benefit for him individually from Brexit. You know, I'm laying my cards on the table here. I support the European Union for a myriad of reasons, but I also benefit personally from being a member of the European Union. I would like the Brexiteers to do the opposite, to explain how them as individuals benefit by not being a member of the European Union. But Farage is a particular case. Farage is benefiting by convincing other people that they should throw away their rights and their benefits, and they should vote against their interests.
Because that single act could bring the entire Eurozone and EU crashing down. I haven't finished with just getting the United Kingdom out of the European Union. I won't settle until I get the whole of Europe out of the European Union.
I really don't think Nigel Farage gives a crap about the European Union, but he understands that other people do. And he understands that if he can convince them to give him money to get that working, then he will be very happy. Nigel Farage didn't create Brexit. Nigel Farage didn't convince the UK to leave the European Union. But what he did was he moved the dial. He convinced people to believe that it was the right idea. Not him on his own, but he was a big part of it. And frankly, I don't like the idea of Nigel Farage coming to Italy and pouring poison into the ears of the Italian people. You know, if Nigel Farage wants to come here and say, you need to leave the European Union, and here is a list of benefits you will have, tangible benefits, by leaving the European Union, then we can have a discussion. I would love to meet him and have a discussion with him. Of course, he wouldn't want to meet the likes of me. But instead, he wants to come here and he wants to pour poison into the ears of the Italian people. And he has many people here in Italy who are willing to help him pour poison into the ears of the Italian people and convince them, just like the British people, to vote against their interests.
He said when speaking at the Liberty University in Virginia. And RT reports, just when you thought he'd been consigned to history, Mr. Brexit himself, Nigel Farage, is back. Only this time, he's franchising out his brand to take another swing at the establishment.
Isn't it funny he refers to RT, which is Russia Today? Now, there have been allegations that Nigel Farage has been receiving money from Russia, and there have been allegations that certain entities here in Italy have been receiving money from Russia as well. There's some interesting words here, franchising out and taking a swing at the establishment. Nigel Farage didn't take a swing at the establishment. He convinced poor people, he convinced the working class to vote against their interests. And he succeeded. You know, you have to stand back and, you know, be in awe of that ability. That's a massive achievement to be able to convince poor people and the working class and the middle class as well, to a certain extent, to vote against their own interests. I don't know how I would like. I would like to be able to have that ability. I wouldn't use it in that way, but I'd like to be able to convince people to vote for their interests. But he's able to convince people to vote against their interests. Once again, you know, the reason it's very easy to point the finger at the EU and say the EU is all of your problems come from the EU. If you have a problem, it's the EU's fault. And the EU doesn't exist as, you know, an entity that can respond to that. And we allow, because of freedom of expression, we allow people like Nigel Farage to pour that poison in people's ears. I support freedom of expression. One of the costs is you allow charlatans and crooks and con men free rein to convince the public to vote against their own interests.
Italexit is all systems go after publicly confirming its plan, and Farage is on board. And it also says that Paragon and Farage met in London last Monday. But
what does Paragone get from this? I don't know at the moment. I'd like to see maybe the financing that's surrounding this party. Is it going to be open? Are they going to explain who's pumping money into this party? At the moment, it's a one-man show. And you could sort of dismiss a one-man show, but I'm not going to, because it doesn't have to be a huge groundswell of support. You only need to convince enough people. You need to convince just enough people to vote against their own interests. Unfortunately, in Italy, because governments here have, over the last number of years, have been so corrupt and incompetent, and the turnout has been so low, it doesn't take a lot to turn the dial, to shift the needle. I don't know if this Paragone will be able to do that, but that's irrelevant. He doesn't have to win a huge number of seats. Look at Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage didn't win a huge number of seats in Parliament. He didn't win any seats in Parliament. But being a threat to Boris Johnson was enough to turn, to change the dynamic, to change the rhetoric of the Conservative Party.
Have also been warnings that by involving himself in the internal politics of a foreign country, Farage might have the same detrimental effect on Italexit as Guy Verhofstadt and Barack Obama had on the UK Remain campaign. And the pro-EU lobby in Italy and the wider EU would of course try to use his lack of Italian credentials and charges of interfering against him.
What lobby? Can you point out who this lobby is? There are people who care about being a member of the European Union, and there are people who don't. There isn't a lobby. I'd be more worried about Paragone and where he's receiving money from. Because Paragone is doing it for some reason. I don't know. Now, he could be a complete nutcase, and he thinks that Italy leaving the European Union would somehow benefit Italy. Once again, a lot of the benefits Italy has as a country are thanks to the European Union. I gave some examples. These, you could dismiss these as stupid examples, but this is on a small scale. There are infrastructure projects that receive European Union funding. Hospitals receive European Union funding when they're constructed. There's a lot of money that comes from the European Union that if it did not, I don't think Italy would be building or creating the number of jobs that it does. And the standard of living would not be up to the level it is. Now, there are huge problems in Italy, especially between the north and the south. But these are problems that are created by the government. They're not created by the European Union. And of course, once again, corrupt and incompetent politicians, instead of taking a step back and putting their hands up and said, yes, we have made mistakes, it's much easier just to point the finger at the European Union. And this is not a problem unique to Italy.
So he may be more of a background figure than a figurehead. But he knows what to do to connect with people, so will be a formidable ally to Paragon and a real worry for the EU establishment and its supporters.
Okay, Farage was able to connect with people in the UK because he pretended to be a working class, ordinary type of guy. But we know that was fake. We understand that was all a big charade. Now, I don't think Nigel Farage would be able to connect with Italians in the same way because the cultures are completely different. So the support that Nigel Farage can give would be probably money. Not actually from Nigel Farage, of course. Nigel doesn't like to put his hand in his pocket, but he would be able to direct people in Patagonia's direction. And then, of course, later on, Nigel will ask for something in return. Nigel doesn't give a crap, as I said before, about the European Union. He understands that he can make money from this criticism of the European Union. There are people willing to vote for him, and there are people willing to give him money. And it's a huge business for him. And now that it's dried up in the UK, he needs to go somewhere else. And he's been probably looking around, okay, where can I sell my snake oil? Oh, look, Italy is having some problems. Let me go in there. I would like Nigel Farage to go fuck himself. Apologies for my language. I love the Italian people. I love this country. And I don't want a charlatan and a snake oil salesman like Farage coming here and pouring poison in the people's ears. He's done enough damage to the UK. His lies and his cheating and his snake oil has convinced the working class, middle class, poor people of the UK to vote against their interests. Now they're looking at lower standards of food and goods being sold. Lower standards of goods and services. Looking at the NHS being sold off to the Americans because Boris Johnson needs to get a trade deal. Whatever he can throw to the Americans, he'll do it, including the NHS. This wouldn't be on the chopping block if it wasn't for Brexit. Workers' rights being diminished, so that some fat cats don't have to pay any more taxes or are able to, shorten the pound. Sorry, I don't want Nigel Farage here.
But there are also reports that Farage has been helping Donald Trump in the run-up to the presidential elections in November, as indicated by his trip to Tulsa a few weeks ago, without being troubled by the US travel ban, I would add.
This is amazing. What do you think about that, Jeff? Jeff hasn't responded to this. He's like, he hasn't been troubled by the travel ban. Do you think that's a problem? Do you think it's not something strange that Nigel Farage was able to enter the United States and return without any problems? Why is that? I know you say, I love Nigel Farage, but surely, even if you like Nigel Farage, that must raise some red flags.
Then there's the domestic matter of keeping an eye on Boris Johnson and Dominic Cummings as the end of the Brexit implementation period looms.
Okay, Nigel Farage has no control over Boris Johnson. Nigel Farage has 0 seats in Parliament. The Brexit Party have no seats in Parliament. And even if it were the case that Boris Johnson had a slight majority, Nigel Farage still wouldn't have any hold over Boris Johnson. Nigel Farage's control over Boris Johnson is as much as my control over Boris Johnson. 0. Back in December, Nigel Farage was saying, yeah, we're going to field candidates everywhere. And then they decided, okay, we're not going to field candidates everywhere. We're going to field half of them. And then they turned out with 0 seats. And one of the messages Nigel Farage was pumping at the time was, I'm going to hold Boris Johnson to account. We're going to get a huge number of seats. Boris Johnson is not going to get a majority. He's going to need us. Either we're going to get into bed with Boris Johnson, horrible image, sorry, or we're going to hold the balance of power. And Boris Johnson will dance to our tune. And what happened? Boris Johnson got an 80-seat majority, and Nigel Farage received 0 seats. You can say that Nigel Farage is holding Boris Johnson to account, but he's not.
Will Boris stick to his line of no deal being better than a bad deal? Or will he sign us up to something less than a true Brexit?
What is it? What do you mean sign us up to something that's less than a true Brexit? You have left the European Union. Brexit is no more. Brexit is over. Isn't it weird how Brexiteers, when I say, when I talk about the transition period, their response is, we have left, we have left, we have left. And now Jeff, who's, I think, the king of Brexit on YouTube, is saying, well, we want to, like in the future, he's using the future tense, we want to have a true Brexit. But you've already had your Brexit. How can you not have a true Brexit if you've already had it?
So many people might prefer Farage to remain here and keep being vocal until Brexit is fully and completely delivered.
Yeah, please, Nigel, stay in England, okay? Nobody wants you. Scotland don't want you. Wales don't want you. Northern Ireland don't want you, I'm sure. Italy certainly don't want you. Please stay in England. You've done enough damage. And make sure Brexit is complete, whatever that means.
Now, I found it strange that people were using the English-sounding terms for this, like...
Okay, so I'll just end the video here because Jeff just goes on talking about the use of English words for Brexit in Italy, which is interesting because why would the Italians be using English words? Could it be because it's not really Italians who are pushing this and it's more maybe Nigel Farage or people in the UK who said, look, let's go to Italy and try to sell our snake oil there, but we won't use Italian words, we'll use English words. There was a movement or some small movement about leaving the European Union, which was in Italian, but it hasn't really gotten off the ground. Anyway, I'm going to end the video here, guys. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to watch all of it. But this whole idea of Boris Johnson's friend Nigel Farage going to Italy to poison the land, I have a serious problem with it. And if Nigel Farage comes here and I happen to be in the vicinity, well, I hope I don't have a milkshake in my hand. Let me know in the comments, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. Why not become a Patreon and enjoy access to our Discord server where we share news, chat, and have some fun. If you become a patron, you can also make video suggestions on topics that are important to you. Check it out via the link in the description.